So now let's look inside of the Earth, since we've taken quite a bit of a look outside. So if we look at the Earth itself, we can see that the composition of the Earth is really mostly four things: iron, oxygen, silica, and magnesium. We're going to actually come back to this concept quite a bit, because we're going to see oxygen and silica, these two tend to couple with each other, and iron and magnesium tend to couple with each other. So we're actually going to give these two groups different names. When we see oxygen and silica together, we're going to call this felsic. When we see iron and magnesium together, we're going to call this mafic. And we're going to return to these terms quite literally throughout the whole semester. But, as you can see, the Earth is mostly composed of those four things. The other 8.8% is the rest of the periodic table. So really, most of the Earth, like I said, is these four items. So, when we think about what the Earth is made up of, really it's just a combination of all the materials on the periodic table. However, we can break it down into different groups. Right? We have organic compounds, which is what we are. Right? We are carbon-based life forms. So anything that is carbon-based, okay, is an organic compound. We can think about fossils, right? Those are definitely organic compounds. We can also think about wood, right? That's all organic compounds. We can also think about things like oil and gas, right? Those are all also organic compounds. So throughout here in a couple of chapters, we're really going to start getting into our different rock types. And we're going to see, first we'll talk about what minerals are. So minerals are all these really interesting naturally occurring solids that we're going to take a look at. We can break down our minerals into three different groups, as you're going to see. We can have crystals, right, which is one, right, which this guy is a crystal, right, which is one mineral grain, right, essentially, and it's got really nice faces on it. And then we can have a grain itself, which think about like a grain of sand, right? That's a very small piece. Okay, it tends to be very irregular in shape. We can also have glasses, which this is a glass over here. We're going to learn about this guy when we get to igneous specifically, but this glass that you see in this picture forms when lava flows directly into water. So that's a pretty neat thing to see, which you can also see all over the island of Hawaii. However, a glass, we're going to see when we get to the mineral chapter, is technically not a mineral, so I won't spoil it for you as to why, but we're going to return to this concept in a couple of chapters. We can also talk about rocks, right? This is geology, so we will definitely talk about rocks in here. So rocks are basically when minerals get together and have a party, right? So they're a group of minerals, okay, grains or glasses. There's three different types. The first is igneous. Igneous are rocks that are cooling from a liquid. So magma or lava, right? When they cool, they form igneous. Then we can get sedimentary. This guy over here. Sedimentary is a rock that forms from pre-existing rock, from the erosion of pre-existing rock. Right? I want you to think about the Mississippi River for a second. It brings down a lot of dirt, right, from the United States. Right? There's a reason why it's called the Big Muddy, right, because it's bringing down all of that dirt. So that dirt, once it reaches the Gulf of Mexico, it's going to settle down to the bottom of the ocean floor, and it's going to form a rock. Right? That'll be a sedimentary rock. Then we also have metamorphic rocks. And metamorphic rocks are rocks that have been altered, right, by pressure and temperature. They're pre-existing, but they're exposed to new pressure and temperatures, so they change. And we're definitely going to get into this. We're going to do one chapter for each of these three. Now, elements definitely combine in ways to make all these different minerals. When we talk about sedimentary rocks, we're going to talk mostly about loose sediment, which is what you see down here or over here. Right? This first picture, that's sand, right? Magnified. So sediment is just loose material. So think about that sand at a beach. Over time, that material can get compressed and form a rock. And we're going to see that sand isn't the only one. There's going to be many, many different types that can actually do that. We can also have metals, right? This is iron over here in this one. But metals are just composed of their metal, right? Aluminum is just made of aluminum. Iron is just made of iron. Copper is just made of copper. But what's pretty important about them is they have high density and they conduct electricity. We also have our melts, right, which we talked about. That's our igneous rock. So this is liquid rock. So liquid rock comes in two varieties, either magma or lava. The only difference is where they cool and solidify. If the molten rock is below the surface of the earth, we call that magma. Once it reaches the surface of the earth, like you see over here, right, and it's flowing out on the surface, we call that lava. So there's no compositional difference between the two. We just give them names based on where we find them. Now, also with our volcanoes, we can get volatiles, which are different gases, okay, that come out from the inside of the earth. Most of the time, these gases are pretty harmless. The gas is just water, right? Water vapor, just like steam that may come out of your tea kettle, right, at home. So nothing dangerous or scary, right, about that one. But we can get carbon dioxide and sometimes some other pretty nasty things. But we're going to talk about that when we get to the igneous chapter. Now, as I mentioned right before, most of the rocks on the earth are made up of silica and oxygen. And we're going to call that, right, felsic, but your book also calls that silicates. So silicates is the same thing as felsic. Okay. So like I said, there's two main types here that you can see. Right? We have our felsic and our mafic. So remember, felsic means it has silica and oxygen. Mafic means it has iron and magnesium. Okay. And then, of course, there's end members in there. Ultramafic, right, meaning it has a lot of iron and magnesium. There's very, very little silica and oxygen. And intermediate is somewhere in between the two. Okay. But these are concepts, like I said, we're going to return to, especially when we get to our igneous chapter.